I was late, but not by much. 15 minutes, tops. Yet when I pulled open the glass doors of Salvatore's and stepped inside, the table was already full. My family had ordered without me. My mother's wineglass was half empty, my father's fork poised over a plate of steaming linguine. Bryn, my sister, was scrolling her phone with one hand and twirling spaghetti with the other. The hostess led me over, her smile polite, but I caught the flicker of something in her eyes, a recognition, maybe, of the dynamic she'd just witnessed. The way their heads turned toward me, some expressions annoyed, others neutral, none remotely happy to see me. "You made it," my mother said, the words warm on the surface but chilled beneath. "Got here as soon as I could," I replied, sliding into the empty seat. "I thought the reservation was for 7? Bryn looked up from her phone, smirking. "Mom moved it up. You should check your texts." I pulled my phone out of my purse. No texts. No missed calls. Just silence. The waiter approached with a practiced smile. "Can I get you something to drink, miss?" "Water's fine," I said. I tried to shake off the unease, to swallow the sting of being left out of my own family's plans. But it clung like humidity on skin. They'd started without me, knowing I wouldn't make it, and no one had thought to reach out. Dinner dragged on. Conversation flowed, mostly about Bryn's new Pilates instructor, Dad's golf game, Mom's latest shopping finds. I nodded where appropriate, but I felt like a guest at someone else's gathering. An afterthought. When dessert came, tiramisu for the table, because Bryn had insisted, the waiter placed the leather folder neatly beside my plate. I blinked. "What's this?" Dad didn't look up. "The bill." My throat tightened. "Why is it with me?" "Because you're the one who handles these things," Mom said, her tone casual, as if she were commenting on the weather. "Handles these things." As if it were my role, my duty, to pick up every tab. I flipped the folder open. $1,720.43. Nearly $2,000 for a dinner I hadn't even been present for in full. My pulse hammered. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice steady though my hands trembled. Bryn arched a brow. "It's not that big a deal, Marin. You make way more than I do." Something inside me cracked. A soundless fissure. For years I'd absorbed their emergencies, their indulgences, their assumptions. I had told myself it was love, that helping them was what family did. But love was supposed to be reciprocal. This was exploitation. I took the bill in both hands, tore it cleanly down the middle, then again and again, until the paper lay in confetti-like shreds on the linen tablecloth. The table froze. Forks stilled. Bryn's mouth fell open. "I'm not paying for this," I said, my voice calm, terrifyingly calm. "Not anymore." And before anyone could reply, I stood, gathered my bag, and walked out. The night air hit me like a slap. Cool, sobering, real. My heart raced, but underneath the fear was something else, something unfamiliar. Relief. My apartment greeted me with silence, the kind that presses against your ears until you notice it. I kicked off my shoes, set down my purse, and went straight for the small fireproof box in my closet. Inside were folders, neatly labeled because that's who I was, the one who kept records, who tracked every penny. I pulled out the thickest one, family assistance. Spreading the papers across my kitchen table, I felt like an archaeologist excavating the ruins of my own life. Check stubs, Venmo transfers, receipts, all neatly logged. Mortgage payments for my parents when Dad's business had gone under. Rent for Bryn when she needed time to find herself. Dental work for Mom. Car repairs. Vacations. Gifts. 3 years. $47,382.17. The number stared back at me, black ink on white paper, stark and undeniable. I sat down hard in the chair, my breath catching. Nearly $50,000. Money I could have saved, invested, used to buy a home or travel the world. Money that was mine, siphoned off bit by bit, always framed as temporary, as necessary as family. I pressed my palms to my face. How had I let it go this far? The answer was simple. I loved them. Or at least, I wanted to believe they loved me back. That they saw me as more than a safety net, more than an endless well of resources. But staring at the ledger, I couldn't ignore the truth. Love didn't look like this. Anger rose, sharp and hot, but beneath it was something heavier. Grief. Not just for the money, but for the years, the opportunities, the self I had sacrificed on the altar of obligation. I pulled my laptop closer and opened a blank spreadsheet. If my life had been a ledger for them, it was time to make one for myself. Financial independence plan. Income, expenses, savings, investments. Aggressive 6-month goals. A future with boundaries. One where no automatic transfer to Bryn's account quietly drained my reserves. One where family emergencies no longer swallowed my dreams. I canceled the recurring payments, deleted Bryn as a backup on my credit card, and stared at the confirmation screens. My hands shook, but not from fear. From freedom. My phone buzzed.
Theo.
I answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said, warmth in his voice. "You sound different." I laughed, a sound half bitter, half liberated. "You have no idea." The envelope was heavy stock, the kind that banks used when they wanted to look official. I almost missed it in the stack of grocery circulars and pre-approved credit card offers that had come through my mail slot. But when I slid it open, my breath caught. Chase Bank. The letter inside was crisp, the language polite and corporate. "Thank you for opening your new Sapphire Reserve account. Your card will arrive shortly." My blood chilled. I hadn't applied for a new card. My finances were already on lockdown after that dinner, my accounts freshly fortified. The only person who ever had access to my personal details, social security number, birthday, address, was me. Except no. That wasn't true, was it? My parents had asked for my social before, for tax reasons. Bryn had crashed on my couch during her between jobs months and borrowed my laptop more than once. I had left files out, passwords written down in a desk drawer for safekeeping. I skimmed further down. The billing email, brenda.williams86@gmail.com. And the mailing address, my parent house. The page trembled in my hand. My sister. My own family. They hadn't just drained me with open hands, they had stolen from me, taken my identity and turned it into a tool for their convenience. I dropped into the nearest chair, letter crumpling in my fist. That night, I called Theo. He picked up on the second ring.
"Hey.
You okay?" "No," I said, blunt. "Not even close." By the time I finished explaining, every word tumbling out, from the letter to the email address to the address change, his tone had shifted from casual concern to something harder. "This isn't just financial abuse, Marin," he said. "It's fraud. Identity theft. That's a felony." "I can't." My voice cracked. "I can't believe they'd do this." Theo was quiet a moment, and then, "I believe it. You've been telling me pieces of this story for years. This is just the next escalation. But here's the good news. Now you've got evidence. Something concrete. They can't gaslight you out of this one." The word evidence steadied me. Numbers and facts had always been my ground. Feelings could be twisted, but documents? Those spoke plainly. "Help me build a case," I said. "Already on it," he replied. For a week, we became investigators. Nights spent hunched over my kitchen table, papers and printouts spread around us like maps of a crime scene. The new Chase account, transactions trickling in, luxury skincare, a boutique hotel in Charleston, Uber rides billed to my name. Addresses all tied to my parents' house or Bryn's phone. Theo assembled it into a dossier, application dates, billing addresses, transaction logs. He pulled my credit report, highlighting the hard inquiry linked directly to my social. It was damning. And yet, late at night when Theo finally left and the apartment fell silent again, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My chest hurt with a different kind of ache. Because no matter how logical the evidence, my heart kept whispering the same raw question.
How could they?
One evening, over takeout containers littering the table, Theo looked at me with that lawyer's gaze that always cut to the bone.
"So," he said.
"What's the endgame?" "I don't know," I admitted. "You have a case here. Strong one. You could file a police report. Press charges. The words landed like stones in my stomach. Taking my own parents and sister to court? The image was unbearable. I don't want to destroy them, I whispered. You're not destroying them, Theo said gently. They've already been destroying you. All you're doing is stopping it before they take any more. I stared at him, the takeout pad tie cooling between us. What if they never forgive me? Theo reached across the table, touched my hand. Marin, forgiveness is not the same thing as freedom. You don't owe them either. Something shifted in me then, small but solid. A seed planted. Maybe I couldn't picture calling the police yet, but I could picture walking into my parents' house with this dossier in hand. I could picture looking them in the eye and telling them I knew, and for once, they wouldn't have the power to deny it. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it was, each mile taut with anticipation. Theo rode shotgun, the leather portfolio resting across his lap. Evidence, neat and undeniable. When Mom opened the door, her smile faltered the second she saw him. Marin, she said, cautious. We weren't expecting. This is Theo Ramsey, I interrupted. My attorney. We need to talk. The words tasted strange, powerful. We sat in the living room, the same room where I had opened Christmas presents as a kid, where Bryn and I had sprawled on the carpet watching cartoons. Now it felt like a courtroom. Theo laid the documents on the coffee table. We have records showing an account was opened in Marin's name without her consent, he said, his tone even, professional. That is identity theft. Dad's brow furrowed. There must be some mistake. Theo slid the first page across the table. The Chase application, my name and social, but Bryn's email. Mom's face drained of color. Bryn fidgeted in her seat, eyes darting everywhere but the page. You used my identity, I said, voice steady. You stole from me. It wasn't stealing, Bryn blurted. We just needed some breathing room. You make so much more than me. Stop. My voice cut sharper than I intended. I don't care what your justification was. You opened a credit card in my name. You spent nearly $19,000. That's not borrowing. That's fraud. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't think you'd mind. Didn't think I'd mind? My laugh was bitter. You didn't think at all. You just took. Theo placed the final document on the table, a demand letter, repayment in full within 45 days, or legal action would follow. Silence stretched, heavy as concrete. For the first time, I watched my family's faces shift, not with annoyance at my boundaries or dismissal of my protests, but with the realization that I had evidence, leverage, power. I rose, gathering my bag. You know what happens if you don't comply. And then I walked out, Theo at my side. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it was, each mile taut with anticipation. Theo rode shotgun, the leather portfolio resting across his lap. Evidence, neat and undeniable. When Mom opened the door, her smile faltered the second she saw him. Marin, she said, cautious. We weren't expecting. This is Theo Ramsey, I interrupted. My attorney. We need to talk. The words tasted strange, powerful. We sat in the living room, the same room where I had opened Christmas presents as a kid, where Bryn and I had sprawled on the carpet watching cartoons. Now it felt like a courtroom. Theo laid the documents on the coffee table. We have records showing an account was opened in Marin's name without her consent, he said, his tone even, professional. That is identity theft. Dad's brow furrowed. There must be some mistake. Theo slid the first page across the table. The Chase application, my name and social, but Bryn's email. Mom's face drained of color. Bryn fidgeted in her seat, eyes darting everywhere but the page. You used my identity, I said, voice steady. You stole from me. It wasn't stealing, Bryn blurted. We just needed some breathing room. You make so much more than me. Stop. My voice cut sharper than I intended. I don't care what your justification was. You opened a credit card in my name. You spent nearly $19,000. That's not borrowing. That's fraud. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't think you'd mind. Didn't think I'd mind? My laugh was bitter. You didn't think at all. You just took. Theo placed the final document on the table, a demand letter, repayment in full within 45 days, or legal action would follow. Silence stretched, heavy as concrete. For the first time, I watched my family's faces shift, not with annoyance at my boundaries or dismissal of my protests, but with the realization that I had evidence, leverage, power. I rose, gathering my bag. You know what happens if you don't comply. And then I walked out, Theo at my side. By week 4, my parents cracked. The call came on a Tuesday mid-afternoon. Mom's voice trembled. We're working on getting the money together. Please don't take this to court. 45 days, I reminded her. That was the agreement. Marin, darling, we love you. Can't we just? I hung up before she finished. My hands shook, but not from fear. From power. For once, I was the one setting the terms. Day 43. I woke to a Venmo notification. $18,900 transferred into my account. The note read only, "We're sorry." I stared at the screen, numb. They had done it. Paid it back. The weight that lifted was physical. I felt it in my shoulders, in the space between my ribs. Years of burden, finally returned. Not erased, but acknowledged. I paid off the fraudulent card in full that afternoon. Closed the account. Filed the documentation away in a folder labeled Resolved Cases. Then I sat at my desk and drafted a final email. The debt is repaid. The matter is closed. Any further attempts to use my identity or access my finances will be met with immediate legal action. This is the last communication I will send on this issue. I pressed send. And then I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peace. The weeks after the repayment felt strangely empty. No texts from Bryn asking for just a quick loan. No calls from Mom about medical bills or Dad about the mortgage. The silence stretched, foreign and vast. For years, I had built my life around their needs. Every paycheck half spent before it cleared, every plan rearranged, every dream postponed. Now, without their demands filling the space, I didn't quite know what to do with the quiet. At first, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For another letter in the mail, another fraudulent account, another plea disguised as an emergency. But nothing came. Instead, the quiet turned into possibility. I started with the basics. A Saturday morning spent at my kitchen table, coffee steaming beside me, spreadsheet open. This time not for them, but for me. Savings goal, $50,000 in 3 years. Retirement contributions, doubled. Travel fund, Quebec in the spring, Paris in 2 years. I set up automatic transfers into accounts labeled not family assistance, but future Marin. Watching the balances tick upward week by week was its own kind of therapy. Work became easier, too. Without the constant drain of financial anxiety, I had energy to spare. I volunteered for projects I used to avoid, pitched new logistics systems that actually saved the company money. My boss noticed. "Marin," he said one afternoon, pausing by my desk, "you ever thought about applying for a director role? You've got the vision for it." The words stunned me.
Me?
The one who had always been stuck in maintenance mode, patching holes in other people's lives? I smiled. "I'll think about it." And for the first time, I actually could. My apartment shifted, too. I replaced the heavy curtains with light linen ones, sunlight streaming in where shadows used to hang. Bought myself a new couch, soft and wide enough for friends to sprawl on. Hung photos from my own travels instead of family portraits that only reminded me of debt. It felt like claiming space I hadn't realized was mine. And then there were my people. Theo, of course, who had been there through every gritted teeth moment, who never once made me feel small for falling into old patterns. Lisa, who dragged me out for happy hours and laughed until I forgot I had ever cried over my family's betrayal. Devin from accounting, who introduced me to his board game group, where weekends were spent around tables full of cards, dice, and easy camaraderie. These weren't people who asked what I could give them. They were people who liked me, plain and simple, who showed up with wine and pizza instead of demands. One night, as I sat at my dining table surrounded by laughter, empty plates, and the clatter of dice, It struck me. This was family. Not the people who drained me dry, but the ones who filled me up. Spring came, and with it, Quebec. I booked the trip on my own card, my own dime, my own choice. No guilt, no hesitation. Just me, wandering cobblestone streets, eating croissants by the river, breathing air that was mine alone. Standing on a terrace overlooking the city, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because this wasn't just a vacation. It was proof. Proof that I could live a life that was mine, untouched by obligation, fueled by my own desires. The envelope was ivory, the lettering embossed. A wedding invitation, from Cousin Paige. I turned it over in my hands, the gold script catching the light. Old Marin would have said yes immediately. Bought the registry's most expensive gift, covered part of the reception bill if asked. Smiled and swallowed the tension when my parents pretended nothing had happened. New Marin set the envelope down on her counter. Walked away. Days later, it was still there, unopened, gathering dust. When Lisa asked if I was going, I shook my head. "They're still family," she said carefully. "Maybe by blood," I answered, "but not by choice." And that was the truth. Summer shimmered into fall. My savings grew. My promotion application went in. My travel fund ticked steadily upward. And my phone stayed blessedly silent. One evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city glow below. For years, I had thought freedom would feel like running away. But it didn't. It felt like staying. Like sitting in my own space, knowing it was mine, and breathing without the weight of expectation. The thought came, clear and sharp. I don't need them. It wasn't bitter. Just true. I didn't need their approval, their apologies, their presence. I had my own ledger now, and it balanced in my favor. For the first time, my life was mine. People still ask about my parents sometimes. At work events, with friends of friends, with distant relatives who don't know the details. I've learned to answer simply. We have different views on family obligations. And then I changed the subject. Because the truth is, I don't think about them much anymore. Not with anger, not with grief. Just not at all. My story isn't about them anymore. It's about me. The woman who tore up a $1,700 bill in the middle of a restaurant. Who built walls around her finances and filled her home with sunlight. Who chose herself, finally, after years of choosing everyone else. Some ties are best left in the past. And when I raise a glass now, it's not to obligation or sacrifice. It's to freedom.
To me.